So with that, I want to introduce our next keynote speaker. It is Johnny Crowder. He's a 28-year-old survivor of suicide and abuse. He's a TEDx speaker. If you aren't familiar with TED Talks, please, sometime when you're not listening to Johnny, Google that and you can find out what that is. He's a touring musician, a mental health advocate, and founder and CEO of Cope Notes, a text-based mental health platform that provides daily support to users in nearly 100 countries around the world. He has 10 years of clinical treatment, a psychology degree from the University of Central Florida, and a decade of peer support and public advocacy through the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Johnny's youthful vigor for mental health has impacted millions of lives across the globe since his first keynote address in 2011. Johnny's refreshingly candid perspective has attracted praise from hundreds of outlets, including Upworthy, from CNN, and from Forbes magazine. Even when commanding a virtual stage or touring with his metal band, Prison, his infectious positivity and firsthand experience with multiple mental illnesses, ranging from bipolar disorder and OCD to schizophrenia, uniquely equip him to provide a realistic yet hopeful insight into the pains of and hardship with authenticity, levity, and unconventional wit. So I'd like to introduce our keynote for this afternoon, Johnny Crowder.
28? I'll take that. 28 years old, that's a lie. I'm some undetermined number older than 28, and I'll let everybody here guess what the actual age is. 15? Who said 15? 16, you're absolutely right. I'm just like all of the other 16-year-olds you know with a face tattoo. Someone said 32. This is a bad game. We're going to stop playing this game. We're going to start my keynote because this is a dangerous game to play. As we sit, I know what most of you are thinking. Is this the guy from the lunch reading with the fake sleeves? No. But he did a fantastic job. Real quick, can you guys please applaud for that lunch reading? Oh my word! Oh my word. No wonder they didn't give you a preview. I don't normally start my talks like this with everyone moving and us figuring out AV, so I figure I'll continue in that same vein and start with a story. I met with a speaking coach recently. I've been speaking to live audiences for over a decade. I've been doing this for a long time, and I met with a speaker. Actually, it was the CEO of my speaking agency. He flew to see me in DC, and he said, you should start your talks with a story. So before you introduce yourself, before you tell people about your background, launch into something impactful, a story that they can remember. So, because just before I got on stage, I was talking to a good friend of mine, a new friend of mine, about dogs. Are there any dog people in the house? Okay. I have a quick dog story, if you have time for that. So when I was growing up, I really, really wanted a dog. I was partial to Goldens. Yes, partial to big dogs that you can kind of push around and wrestle with. I'm nervous with a tiny dog that if I roll over, I will smush said dog, so I like big dogs. And when I was growing up, I would beg my parents for a dog. Almost every single year, invariably. It's not like my parents said, what do you want for Christmas? Because I already knew the answer was a dog. And their answer was, no. Just like we told you last year. Of course we're not going to get you a dog. And their reasoning was, well, your cousins have dogs. And when we go to visit them, you can say hi to those dogs. So, it sounds like a great plan, but the problem was my cousins lived in Kentucky, and I grew up in Florida. So all that's between me and this giant fluffy golden retriever is a 14-hour one-way drive. And I'm 9, so I'm not driving. So we would go up to visit my cousins about once a year. And they're real southern folk. So think like what you think of when you think of Kentucky, those are my cousins. And so I go up there, and I remember they had multiple dogs, which is not fair. I didn't get to have one and they got to have 2. Give us one. We'll take it home. We'll take good care of it. So this one particular year, this was leading up to us going up to visit said dogs again. We're supposed to be visiting with our cousins, but I felt like we were visiting the dogs. And we found out that Hunter, one of my cousins, who I always viewed as maybe my luckiest cousin because he got to spend the most of his childhood with the dogs. See, Logan and Katrina had already just about moved out by the time these dogs came into the picture, but Hunter was still young. So he gets to live with these dogs year after year. Christmas morning, giving a bone to these dogs wrapped. Oh, come on. I was so jealous. And we get a phone call about an incident that happened that caused my cousins to give that dog up for adoption. And I was like, what on earth could cause something like that to happen? And also, why didn't they give it to us? Because they knew that we wanted a dog. And I came to find out that one day Hunter was playing with this giant, yellow, friendly dog. And he picked up this tennis ball to throw it. And this dog jumped to grab the tennis ball and sunk his canine tooth into Hunter's eye socket. Hunter went to the hospital. The doctors were fairly certain that Hunter would not be able to see ever again. Will make driving difficult. Will make getting a job difficult. Might make dating difficult. All these things were rushing through my head. And then I thought, is it the dog's fault? Is it Hunter's fault? Or does it matter? Is Hunter sitting there thinking, curse that dog? Or is he thinking, I hope I'm able to see again? So, to fast forward, Hunter can see now. He has a really cool scar on his face to show for it. It's a great conversation starter. They gave the dog up. But the reason why I start with this story is I want you to think about Hunter getting another dog. What does that look like? You know, he hasn't had another dog since, for understandable reasons. But what does it look like if Hunter gets married and his wife wants a dog? Or his kids want a dog? And I know there are adults in this room who wonder, why don't the youth that I work with trust me? What did I do? And I always think that's kind of like Hunter saying, I don't want a golden retriever. And that dog thinking, what did I do? What could I do differently? Can I be more playful? Can I take more naps? Can I bark less? It has nothing to do with that next dog and everything to do with Hunter's near loss of vision. I think there's a huge disconnect between adults that work with youth and youth that try to communicate to adults, and things get lost in that loop. I think a big part of it is what I've been through has nothing to do with you, and yet it makes me not trust you. When I was growing up, I did not trust adults because I had been hurt by so many of them that I figured adults were the enemy. You could be the nicest adult. You could bribe me with all of the snacks in your office, that I'm sure half you guys do stuff like that. And it would work temporarily. I would think, ooh, maybe I can trust this person. But eventually I would remember, this person is an adult, and I've been hurt by a lot of those, so I'm going to keep my distance. Did anyone listen to the introduction of who I was? Or were you guys kind of settling down? You weren't in here? That's understandable. So let's try this. Let's do this. I know my CEO of my speaking agency would be very happy I started with a story, but it was so serious. And I'm not always a very serious person, so I want to start this real quick call and response exercise. All you have to do is repeat after me. It's going to take 5 seconds. Ready? Who? Who? Who the heck is this guy? Thank you for asking. My name is Johnny Crowder, and I am a bunch of things. So some of the things, like mentioned earlier, you can find on Google, right? So I've given multiple TED Talks about mental health. I have a degree in psychology. I'm a certified recovery peer specialist, which is a mouthful. It means I have letters after my name, but I'm not a doctor because I couldn't stay in school for that long. And you could probably also Google that I run an organization called Cope Notes, so we help people like you and me all over the world improve their mental and emotional health. And if you're wondering why I look like I just stepped off the stage at a death metal concert and flew to Iowa, it's because I did. So I literally have been touring in a metal band for ever since I had underarm hair. And I've actually met some people in this room through, I used to play Woolies in Des Moines, if anyone has ever been there. And music is very much a big part of my life. I'll touch on that a little bit later. Do we have a question? So the band is called Prison. And yes, it's the jail kind. I have a lot of people say Prism, and I'm like, that's sweet. No, it's Prison. You heard right. I'll talk a little bit about why metal appealed to me, why I enjoy screaming on stages all over the country. But also, I think when I was originally talking to some of the organizers for this event about coming to speak here, there was one sort of descriptor or accolade that felt more applicable than any of the others, and that is that, believe it or not, I used to be a kid. Yeah. And in fact, some of the adults in this room might have also been kids, but you have to ask. I am a former child. I am a recovering child. And I grew up with, I grew up with a bunch of different, so I grew up with mental health conditions. That part a lot of people know. So I grew up with bipolar disorder. I grew up with schizophrenia. I grew up with PTSD from abuse. I grew up with, OCD. I grew up with, there's like a big laundry list of all of these different diagnoses. It kind of looks like there's a fruit platter in the green room for speakers, and there's like a little bit of pineapple and a little bit of grapes and a little bit of watermelon. That's kind of what my mental health diagnoses look like. It's like a little bit of all of these different diagnoses. And my recovery was not linear at all. So if you would have met me, let's say 15 years ago, so I'm 15 years old. And for you math nerds out there, that tells you how old I am. So about 15 years ago, if you were to meet me, I would not be able to make eye contact. I would not be able to speak in complete sentences. I wouldn't be able to touch doorknobs. When I turned 16, I did not want to drive. I had all of these things that I was actually incapable of doing. Not that I was afraid of doing them. Not that I didn't want to do them. I actually couldn't. I didn't touch a human being for 6 years. 6 years. No handshakes, no high fives. As you can imagine, it made dating pretty difficult. And then this was 16 or so. I had just gotten my license, and I decided, is this being recorded? I think it is. Okay. I'm going to change what I share. Yes. When I turned 16, officer, I made a decision that gave me a choice between therapy and juvie. And I chose therapy, begrudgingly. Here's what it actually looked like. My mom said, I can drive you to the hospital now, or I can call the police, and they can drive you to the hospital now. And I was like, give me a moment to think. Of course, I allowed her to drive me, and I was really skeptical. So let's talk my first meeting with a clinician. I thought it was a bunch of junk he was feeding me. I didn't believe in therapy. I didn't believe in medication. I didn't believe in treatment. I was not sold. I was really skeptical that it was working for anybody. And then I started taking psychology courses in high school. I started learning that, okay, treatment may work for some people, but I am too different. What I've been through is too funky and unique and special, and therefore, whatever this doctor has to say to me is irrelevant, because he's basing that on conversations with people who are not me, who've been through things that are different than the things that I've been through. So not only was I originally skeptical that treatment worked for anybody, then I was skeptical that it would work for me. And I remember there was this one moment that absolutely shook me from ever telling the truth to any adult I met. So keep in mind, if you were in the room for the dog story, I already had a little bit of, let's say, distrust for adults. Whenever I looked at an adult, I assumed that they didn't like me, that they wanted to harm me, that I couldn't confide in them. And then I thought, well, how about youth? Maybe other people my age, maybe I can trust them. My brothers, I have siblings, maybe I can trust my siblings. And there was one moment where that turned for me, and I actually had nowhere to go. So I'd already disqualified adults. I said, you're not trustworthy, you don't like me, you're here to hurt me. Maybe you're colluding with my parents. So let's say Child Protective Services shows up in my house. I don't trust these folks, they're talking to my parents. Why on earth would I tell the truth? Especially if I'm going to be punished for telling the truth once they leave. I learned to lie, but I figured maybe I can tell the truth to people my age. So I'd opened up a little bit to my brothers. Not a ton, because they would, they were brothers. I mentioned a lot of diagnoses that I had. I think maybe the most serious and chronic one, we don't have a lot of time to talk about it here, but I was diagnosed at an early age with middle child syndrome. So I have an older brother, I have a younger brother. It is chronic. They're supposed to be working on solutions, but I haven't seen any treatment produce favorable results yet. I have an older brother and a younger brother. And just a little bit of context for this story. My older brother is sort of like this, picture this, like a football throwing, truck driving, beer drinking, all-American, red-blooded man's man, right? That's my older brother. Now, my little brother is this, let me think how to describe him. He's this, he's kind of like a football throwing, truck driving, beer drinking, red-blooded, all-American man's man. And I am wearing women's jeans right now. So if that gives you any idea of how well I fit in to my family dynamic. So at this time, I was already pretty hesitant to open up to them, right? We didn't get along particularly well, and I felt that anything I gave them would be ammo for them to use against me. But over time, specifically, my OCD became so disruptive at family meals or around the house that eventually I had to divulge a little bit of information. And that information basically looked like, please don't touch my food. I don't touch my food. I eat Cheetos with a fork. It takes me 45 minutes to make a sandwich because I can't touch any of the ingredients. Please don't touch my food. And I didn't know how better to communicate that because I was 15 years old. So one day we went to one of the only restaurants that my family could afford and that I felt comfortable eating at. Any guesses? Denny's. What type of person with OCD feels, no, think, my drummer works at Denny's, he's gonna crack up when he hears that. Think of a restaurant where someone with OCD and an aversion to germs specifically might feel comfortable eating that's pretty cheap. Oh, what'd you say? Subway. And it's because, why? Why Subway? They wear gloves and you can see them. So for me, it's basically the only option for eating out. Very romantic for dates, I know. I've taken a girl to Subway. Didn't work out for some reason. So we went to Subway. This was so picture this. It's my mom, my older brother, my younger brother, and myself, and we're all in line. And this was back in like the $5 footlong era, which is like ancient history now. But before, you used to be able to buy a footlong sub for $5. So what my mom would always do is anytime there was like something special, like someone's birthday or something, we would go to Subway, $20 for 4 sandwiches, we would eat half and then save half and have it for dinner. So this was one of those sort of celebratory lunches, and oh my word, this is a weird story. It's like playing back in my head. Strap in. So my mom goes through and orders. I always order last because I'm the most particular. So I was like a nightmare Subway guest. I was like, can you please lay the turkey like this and make sure that they're perpendicularly aligned? Yes, I was that. And so my mom went through, ordered, she was quick. My brothers went through and ordered, they were quick. And then for me, I had to have every little thing exactly just the way it needed to be in order for me to eat it. And then I was also very careful to watch which sandwich was mine. So they would put these sandwiches on a tray and I would watch it to make sure, that's mine, please, nobody touch that. And my brothers, being brothers, decided to grab my sandwich. What do you think they did? What's that? What'd you say? You heard this story? So my brothers didn't, because what I thought they would do is kind of open it up and touch it and be like, oh, well, this is actually Johnny's. And I'm like, well, now I can't eat it. Dude, I've never seen anything like this in my life. Hope I never see it again. My brother took a 1-foot-long sandwich and licked it for the entire length of the sub. It must have taken like an entire second or two. It was like, That's a lot of ground to cover with a tongue. I mean, it's dry by the end of the lick, right? He made it so that I could never, ever dream of not only having that sub, but maybe ever eating at Subway again. And I remember, so my brothers were cracking up. They thought it was hilarious. And I was crushed because it wasn't just the sandwich. It wasn't just the lick. It was the bigger story that was being told to me, which is if you open up, if you tell the truth about what you're going through, it will be used against you by the people closest to you. And if they'll do it, what interest does a stranger have in protecting you? You better zip that lip and never let out any of the things you're struggling with, because all you're doing is equipping people around you with ammunition. And I learned to be strong, which was really a pseudonym for never telling the truth. I began this habit of lying. And I was thinking a lot. Last night I had dinner with some of the folks who are putting this on. We had a really interesting conversation, and a theme that kept coming up was that they wanted youth voices to be at the center of today. So, yeah, you're ahead of me already. What I want you to do, I'm going to ask you to do this a couple times. Now, keep in mind, I am a professional yeller, right? I travel all over, and people are like, yes, get on that stage and yell. We want to see that. So I'm going to ask only youth. So let's say 18 and below. I want you, yeah, it's coming. You need to warm up or what? So what I want all the youth to do right now, you don't need to get up. Adults, you might want to earmuffs for just a moment. Youth, I want you to yell at the top of your lungs for 3 entire seconds. And I want to be clear with the instructions. You're not yelling profanities. You're not yelling insults. You're not even yelling words. I want you to yell, gibberish. I want you to say no actual word, but yell, scream at the top of your lungs for 3 seconds. I'm going to count to 3, and I want all of you, youth only, to yell. Ready? 1, 2, I'll yell with you. 3. Ah! Do you want to do it again but longer? All right, let's do it again but longer. And you can count. Ready? You hold up your hands. You'll go 1, 2, 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Ah! That felt like 3. Yeah, oh, it's coming. So I get the question a lot, why do you scream in a band and not sing? When you have the option to sing, and yet you choose to scream, what is that about? What informs that? And I always say, what would you do if you felt like nobody could hear you? I don't yell because I think I'm understood. I don't yell because I think my points are getting across. In fact, when I was younger, I would yell not in a band. I would yell at my wall. I would yell at the bay. I would go out to Tampa Bay and scream. I didn't even know how to process what I was going through. And eventually, I fortunately found a few other people who liked me yelling next to them, who liked playing instruments, and eventually we made it a band. But that's not where it started. And I think in the spirit of keeping youth's voices at the center of today, it doesn't matter how loud we yell if the adults aren't listening anyway. And I see that a lot. I see kids get louder and louder and louder, and adults may be hearing but not listening. So I want to briefly, and kids, you're not off the hook, I'm going to get to you. But I'm going to start with adults and talk about active listening. How you can listen and not just hear. What are, just the adults please, what are some body language behaviors and traits that you look for when you're engaging in active listening? Eye contact, what else? Crossed arms, good, what else? Leaning in, what was this? Clenched jaw, okay, just a couple more, these are great. Slouching, nodding, fists up. Oh, like balling your fists? Okay, I thought you were like, if this happened. I'm like, dude, you're not having a conversation at that point. Like something else is happening. Oh my word. Yeah, so tension in the face. Actually, I was just talking about this movie at lunch. There's this movie that just came out called Triangle of Sadness. And I was curious about the definition of what is triangle of sadness. And that definition, the triangle of sadness is an area between your two eyebrows and the bridge of your nose. I had no idea. And that's more body language. It's more facial expression. It's something that most of us don't even think about on a day-to-day basis. And if we do, we don't know the proper term for it. But we see people's emotions when they speak to us. We hear people's emotions when they speak to us. But I remember something that nobody said that I did a ton when I was growing up was I would recoil. So let's say a teacher is walking behind me in class. I could not help it. I would flinch. I would do anything I could to sort of make sure that that teacher did not touch me because of all of the abuse that I had endured. Even if someone was walking by, my body language said, eh. Even if I had no reason to distrust that particular adult, my body had learned to communicate more effectively than verbally, because if that teacher asked me if anything was wrong, I would say, no, I'm fine. Eh. I would always flinch. My body was more telling. And I think a lot of adults that I met with when I was younger would say, well, he said he was fine. Read my body. Listen to my body. It's telling you things that I can't. It's telling you things I'm afraid to tell you for fear of getting in trouble. I really wanted to kind of stay out of the sight of adults. I wanted to blend in. I wanted to not rock the boat, which is hilarious because eventually, when I was growing up, I thought any attention was bad attention. Like if at the end of the day, my dad came home and noticed me, I was in big trouble. Because in my house, you were not noticed for things that you did well. Your reward for getting good grades or behaving was being ignored. And it was the sweetest reward in my house. It was the best thing that could happen to you, was not being acknowledged, because it meant you were safe for one more night. You were out of harm's way. So in school, I so badly wanted to blend in that I would almost mute my actual self, who I really am, to try to blend in the best, so that if you looked at a group of kids, you wouldn't be able to tell which one I was. I needed that insulation. I was afraid. And I probably didn't know it. And what's interesting about a teacher asking if I'm okay when I'm flinching is that there's a status difference there that the teacher can forget. So I'm the CEO of a technology company, and this is my first time being a CEO. I'm 5 years in, and I'm still learning how to be a leader. Thank you. And my other friends who are CEOs have been doing it longer than me, which is great. So I always ask them, we meet up all the time, and I ask them, what do I do about this? And I face this challenge with an employee, and my employees are older than me. So I forget that I'm the CEO all the time. I'll say something, I'll ask a question, and one of my friends will say, have you considered that he or she might have heard it that way because you're their boss? And I was like, no, I didn't, because that person has children and a mortgage, and I totally forgot that there was any sort of status difference between us, at least professionally. And I think when you're in a school setting or when you're dealing with youth, a lot of you, and I'll touch on this a little bit later, a lot of the adults in this room, I freaking know you. You think you're the cool adult. I know that you think that. And to some people, you really are that cool adult. But isn't that just a little too convenient of a reason why things are going well with certain kids, is that you're just so gosh dang cool? Oh, I'm different. I'm different. It's wonderful that you are different. And to many people, you may be really cool. But I think sometimes what gets lost is the fact that even the coolest adult still felt like they had more in common with my abusive parents than me. Maybe it was your height. Maybe it was your age. Maybe it was the fact that you drove a car and I didn't. There were all sorts of things that I equated with you having more in common with the people that hurt me than the people who were trying to help me. It's a lot to overcome. And if you're a teacher and you ask if someone is fine, if you're an adult and you ask if someone is fine, and they say no, if they say yes, it's probably because they want to avoid some sort of confrontation. Telling the truth is scary. So the solution here is actually avoiding yes or no questions. That sort of binary feeling made me feel trapped. There's a right answer, there's a wrong answer. And if I get this wrong, I'm in big trouble. At least that's what I've learned growing up. An example of this in my company is one time, this was early on, we put out a feedback form and we sent it to thousands of people that had used Cope Notes, and we, in the form it said something like, "Do you like Cope Notes?" Very rudimentary. And wouldn't you know it, everyone said yeah. So we figured our work is done. We've collected feedback. But then we thought about it and we said, oh, I don't know if we just learned anything. So we put out another feedback form and we asked, if you had to change one thing about Cope Notes, what would you change? The answers were mind-blowing. We've actually built features and changed the product based on those people's answers. And the reason why they went into such detail and shared their actual personal lived experience with using what we built, the reason why they told the truth is because we created an environment where there was no wrong answer. No matter what they said, it would be right. I think the adults in this room can do that for the youth that you work with. Taking away this yes and no binary, right answer, wrong answer framework, and introducing something that is more open-ended. Something that leaves room and creates a hypothetical scenario where whatever you say next is the right answer. It allows for a lot more creativity and a lot more honesty. But I figured if we want to keep the youth voice at the center, and we've determined that it kind of doesn't matter how loud we yell if adults aren't listening. It also doesn't matter how loud we yell if we're lying. And I think you would be shocked at how many of the kids you work with, even the ones that you think you have great relationships with, are not telling you the truth. And a lot of the kids here right now, you're not looking me in the eyes, which tells me that I'm hitting something. A lot of you are lying to the adults that you're working with and then wondering why they're not helping you more. They don't have the data. They don't have enough information. They can't help you. It's kind of like something that I hear a lot about. I do a lot of work in the mental health field, and this really common trope in the mental health field is, well, you know, if you are in a wheelchair, people are very accommodating to you because they can see that there's a limitation. But if you live with a mental or emotional health condition, then people don't jump to accommodate you because they don't have a visual cue. They're not as clued in. So part of it is on us to share with other people what's going on, or else they have no chance of helping us. You know, for me, I learned to become less and less accurate and lie more to fit in socially. I wanted to assimilate, and I didn't want to rock the boat. So something that I've found that has really built trust with groups, both from the adult to the youth and the youth to the adult, is asking short response questions that are based on opinion. So you're asking for subjective information. I'm not saying this because I think it will work. I'm saying this because I've seen it work time and time and time again. The biggest examples of this happening with me were when my therapist would ask me for my input on her decisions. I cannot explain what that did to level the playing field between us and establish a healthier relationship. So that might look like, what color tie should I wear on Friday? Blue, green, purple, red. So imagine, neon what? Oh, I love it, neon pink. So imagine how I would feel if I suggested neon pink, and then that adult wore that tie that I suggested. The cue, the larger story that's telling to me is my input was listened to and acted on by an adult. They're not just saying, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. I get you. We're like so here. No, they wore the tie. They did. I gave input and they acted. I have proof. They showed me that they listened to me. They showed me that they take my input into consideration. Another example is, I'm thinking about seeing a movie this weekend. Do you have any good recommendations? People start opening up. People start sharing. I think the biggest mistake that adults make is they think that every conversation around, let me think how to word this. Every conversation that establishes a deeper relationship with the youth, adults think that it has to be about the problem, and it really doesn't. It can be about anything. It has more to do with your posture than the thing you're asking about. It has more to do with you showing that you would listen than actually listening. So before I get to this next part of the talk, I see a couple people in the audience that are snoozing. So I just want all of us to yell really loud on 3 to do the youth voices thing. Ready? 1, 2, as loud as you can. 3. That was just, it was in my outline that we were supposed to do that there. Thank you for participating. Oh, hey, guys. Good morning. There's very little that you can do to repair a relationship more effectively than leveling the playing field and taking into consideration what someone's idea is. And one other thing that I would want to bring up is there's this tendency for adults to over-contextualize the challenges that the kids that they work with are facing, and therefore rob that experience of the gravity. So for example, if you've ever seen a kid fall down, and I'm guilty of this, I see my nephew fall down and he starts crying and I'm like, are you serious? Are you serious? You're a foot tall. It wasn't that far of a fall. You're on carpet, right? Like you're totally fine. And you're crying. What is this? What am I watching right now? I hope to God that you unlearn this as fast as possible, because you can't go through life stubbing your toe and having a 5-minute cry fest about it. Someone said, of course you can. It's just so inefficient. It takes up so much time. 10 minutes? You're doubling my nephew. Your attention span is longer than my nephew's. My nephew forgets what he's crying about after 5 minutes. So what I see adults doing is we do that, but we do it for teenagers too. We hear someone go through something where, so you got dumped, whatever. You're going to date more people, probably. What makes her so special anyway? What makes him so special anyway? You're missing the point. The point is that it feels like a big deal in that moment. And when you as an adult over-contextualize, you say, well, in my life, it wouldn't be a really big deal. I mean, the way I think about it is, if my guitarist of my first band ate a peanut he would die. Get over yourself. Grow up. It's a peanut. I eat peanuts all the time. It doesn't matter to him that I can eat peanuts. He has an allergy. And I see adults doing this all the time. We see youth going through something and we say, that would be no big deal if I went through it. And in fact, when I went through it, it wasn't so bad. We rob the youth of their actual experience and then wonder why they're not telling us the truth. Because when they do tell us the truth, we dismiss it. And that's a third thing that I see adults doing to stand in the way of a healthy relationship and a healthy field of communication with the youth that they work with. Because first, some of you aren't listening, which we talked about. Second, does anyone remember that second one? Quiz time. First, you're not listening. We have over-contextualization. What was the third one? It doesn't matter if we're lying. It doesn't matter if the youth, we can shout as loud as we want, but if we're not actually telling the truth, it doesn't matter. And we've laid into adults for almost this entire session, and we're almost to the end, which means that it's time for me to talk to the young folks in the room. Something that I hear all the time. And this, keep in mind, this is exactly my posture when I'm a 15-year-old, mind you. So I'm not saying, how come you guys think this? I say, I thought this. I thought when I was 15 that I was so complicated. I was so different. I was so unique that no one could possibly understand what I was going through. So why try to explain it to somebody? You know, I would look at my therapist and think you know me. You think you've met people like me. I'm nothing like anybody you've ever met. I want you to guess, just real quick. Humans share 60% of our genes with what? Shout it out. What living thing do we share 60% of our genes with? This man says a banana. You think we share 60% of our genes with a banana? He's right. That's the answer. We share 60% of our genes with bananas. And here you are thinking that you're so special and so unique, and you're more than halfway to a banana. In fact, you share 99.9% of your genes with the person sitting next to you. 99.9% of your genes. So the idea that we're so different, we're so unique, we're so special that no one could possibly understand anything we're going through is not true. We have way more in common than you realize. A lot of our life experiences are really similar. In fact, I will virtually guarantee you that the adults in this room are doing the work that they do because they experienced something just like you. And they couldn't get over it. They thought about it for years and they thought, I have to do something to break this cycle. And if you don't believe me, in this room, and you're an adult and you work with youth, raise your hand if you do it for that sweet, sweet $1 million paycheck at the end of every year. Oh yeah, you do it for the money, baby. You do it for the yacht. You do it for the Mercedes. You do it for your mansion, of course, because the mortgage is really high. The people in this room who work with youth they could make more money doing something easier. And they don't. Why? Why not get an easier job that will pay you more? Are you kidding me? Who on earth spends their time and energy trying to help youth who are lying to you about what they're going through? People who care. These adults actually, believe it or not, care about you, or else they would do something easier that paid them more. They are sacrificing comfort and time to work with you. And I understand why you wouldn't want to believe them. It's completely understandable. But at some point, I had to get past no one's helping me, and turn to the people who were trying to help me and think, what does it look like to actually trust these people? Do I continue saying that no one's willing to help me, or do I turn to the people who are trying to help me and give them a chance? Do I tell the truth? Do I talk to them about what's going on? The adults in this room, you know what it looks like when this goes wrong, right? You turn on the news. Open a newspaper. You know what it looks like when youth don't get support. What does it look like when it goes right? Has anybody in here ever helped somebody and then seen a change in their life because of it? Someone's life actually turn around because of something that you did? Maybe it wasn't your first conversation with them. Maybe it was your hundredth. Maybe it took a really long time, but you've changed people. So here's what I want to do. This is a very quick, very, very quick exercise. And then I'm going to say 2 sentences afterwards, and everyone can go refill on popcorn. I know. I smelled it. I want everybody to pair up with just one other person. So, yeah, do some mental math and figure out who you're sitting close to. Ideally, it is someone that you don't know really well. Oh, I'm hearing some sighs. If you're best friends, you can do it. It's going to be harder for you. So once you are paired up, do you have a partner? Okay, that works. It's just going to be harder for you if you know the person, but you can still do it. Does everybody, how about this? Does anybody not have a partner? Raise your hand and we will get you one right now. Oh. Yeah, buddy. Go. Can you come this way then to sit with her? Okay, you got someone? Okay. Oh, good question. Ready? Who doesn't have a partner, and you can come up and be my partner real quick? No, I think you have a partner. Who does not have a partner? Can you come up? You don't have to do anything to the audience, but if you can just come up here, that'd be great. Okay, so here's the activity. Right now, I will give you 30 seconds, starting in a couple seconds, don't worry. I will give you 30 seconds to tell your partner something that you have never told them about your life. Something you have never told them about your life. Ideally, something that has to do with what we've talked about today. So in the lunch session, in any of the other talks and breakout rooms, something about the way you grew up, about your household, about any sort of thing that you experience that has affected why you do the work that you do. I want you to tell them something that they don't know about you. You have 30 seconds. Go. Let's see. I have a sister who is not blood related, and she was my best friend, basically. Like we were really tight. And then last year, she attempted suicide, and I lived with her at the time. We were addicted, and she went to the hospital, and then we've been trying to repair our relationship for almost 2 years. So it was actually the year prior, so it's been almost 2 years.
So I have something a little like that. When I was younger, my father left my family, and it wasn't until I got older that have siblings that I've never ever met. I only have pictures of them, and they're twins, but we don't know where they're at or what happened to them. No. Yeah, so he just yeah.
Okay. One moment. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2. Oh, you guys do work with kids. That was the best it's ever worked. Just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Did all of you share the other way too, or was it just one person sharing? Like, did you do mutual shares? You just have one person? Okay. I love that because most groups that I do don't do mutual. They do like one at a time. It's very like transactional. What I love about this group is he literally was like, oh, you can go first. And then I shared and he's like, okay, here's mine. And I love that. I love that whole spirit of this entire group. That's very, that's special. I do a new event every week. I'm working with groups all over the country. This is one of the only groups that's been like that. So willing to share, so willing to open up. That has been awesome. So because we've already both shared, I guess you can go sit down. Thank you a ton. So you might have noticed, actually, let me ask this. And I promise I'm almost done, powers that be. Who here thought that 45 seconds was a totally appropriate amount of time to share one of the deepest things you've ever shared with anybody? Who's just like, yeah, that was plenty? Okay, this is also the first time anyone has raised their hands for that question. Typically what we see is people go, no, how do you sum up? Like I shared that one of my siblings made an attempt on their life, and we've been trying to repair our relationship ever since, but it has not gone well because I, as a suicide survivor, am triggered by that. So I'm trying to work to repair my relationship with them while also making sure that they're also, like, I need them to do their stuff so that it doesn't bleed into my stuff because that's dangerous for me. And I don't talk about that a lot. And being able to do that in 3 sentences is not easy and probably not as helpful as a longer conversation would be. So my hope is that each of you who just shared something with each other, and this is the last part. I wasn't going to do it, but I'm going to do it. Screw it. Each of you take out your phones right now. You're not going to post anything. You're not going to take photos. Don't worry. But you need your phone for this part. You don't need to call anybody. You don't need to, this is not going to be anything public. Don't worry about it. But you do need to take out your phone. And I want you to open up your calendar. And if you don't use a calendar, open up a note. And I will give you, now the last thing we kind of budged on time. This we will not budge on time because I'm over time right now. I will give you exactly 30 seconds to choose one 30-minute time slot between now and the end of April where you will continue the conversation that you just started with this person. I need it to be on your calendar. I don't care if it's on Zoom. I don't care if it's a phone call. I don't care if it's in person. I need it to be on your calendar before the end of April. You have 20 seconds to schedule it. And I literally see people not scheduling it, not talking to each other. It's blowing my mind. Put it on your calendar. If you have to move it, you'll move it, but it has to be there. It has to be there on your calendar. Ten seconds. Put a hold on your calendar. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I'm going to take 1 minute to share why I did this, and then we'll close. When I was in college, I had already made 2 attempts on my own life. I was self-harming regularly. I was taking antipsychotic medication, but it wasn't helping. I was hallucinating a lot. I was having a very difficult time communicating with other people. And I was on, I don't know if it's called academic probation, but it's where you have to see a counselor in order to stay enrolled, because my behavior was really disruptive. And so I was meeting with a counselor, so I met with a psychiatrist and a psychologist every week in order to make sure that I could still be a student. And I remember I would walk into, this was my poor psychologist's office. This is why we just did this. I would walk into my psychologist's office, and let me give you a quick lay of the land. So let's say this is her chair. This is the door, like where I would come in, and then there was a chair here. It wasn't this big, you know what I'm trying to say. There was a chair here where I would sit. So, and then there was a little trash can right next to the door. I remember that. So trash can, door, chair, and her chair there, and she had a desk and stuff. So every time I would come in and I would go to greet her, like to say what's up, she would give me this little packet that had I had to fill out, it was like a workbook kind of, where I had to do stuff with her in the notebook. And so with the notebook, she would hand me this resource card. And it had all the information for support groups and stuff on it. And every single day I would walk in, same thing, I'd have to take the notebook from her, and I'd go to sit down. I would sit there doing the workbook. At the end, I would get up, I would go give her the workbook back, and then I would take that resource card and throw that bad boy right in the trash can right in front of her on my way out. And I thought I was so cool. I thought I was so defiant because I didn't want to go. I had to go. I didn't choose to go see her. I was forced to go in order to stay in school. So it was my little act of defiance. I hung on to it. I was like, yeah, you can give it to me, and I'm going to throw it in the trash every week. And you give it to me next week, and I'll throw it in the trash. I was like, ah. And then one day she got wise, and she gave me my resource. She gave me that packet, that workbook, and I went to sit down. I'm like, no resource card, well played. And then I totally forgot about it. I gave her the note. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. So she handed it to me while I was sitting down, and it totally threw off my game, and I started fidgeting with it. I was folding it and stuff, and then I had put it in my pocket on accident. And then I go home, and I don't know about you, but when I was in college, I just, for the life of me, would not wash my jeans. I was like, they're fine, just for weeks on end, because I had to pay to use the laundry, and I was super cheap in college, and I was like, nah, I can wear these jeans again. So that resource card lived in my pocket for ages, and then when I finally took out these pants to wash them, I was checking the pockets because my mama raised me right. Check the pockets before I do the wash, and I found this resource card all folded up, and I was like, shoot, I forgot about this. But I didn't have a trash can in my room, and I had roommates who I did not get along with in the living room where the trash can was. And I was like, ugh, fine. I put it on my dresser, and it lives there for a few months. So this thing is now a part of my life. It's this folded up little resource card that has lived there forever. And one night I was up all night, which was a pretty common occurrence. And I got up and looked at the resource card, and I looked at one of the support groups online, or on campus. And 2 days later, I went to the support group, and it sucked. It sucked. It was so stupid. It was I was like, what a huge waste of time. It was like, how do you feel? And do you want a cookie? And I'm like, oh my, this is not helpful at all. And I was so frustrated that I went home and I looked at that resource card again. And I tried something else. And something else and something else from the resource card. And eventually, I found something that actually did kind of help. And I went the next week, and then I went the next week. And then I met some people there. And they were pretty nice. They understood what I was going through. The whole point of you putting time on your calendar is to make sure that you don't experience this statistical average of 11 years between onset of symptoms of any of the stuff that we're talking about and actually engaging with any level of care. If you can make that shorter than a decade by having a conversation, if you can skip the line, I want you to don't be like me. Be like you. Don't let this conversation end when the session is over, when the day is over. Have this conversation next week or the week after and watch it snowball. It did not happen fast for me, but it happened. And this is what it can look like when it goes right. So for the adults in here who give a crap, and for the youth in here who are trying and fighting to feel better and stick up for people who are your age who are going through this, neither of you can stop. In fact, both of you have to double down. So I want to say, first and foremost, thank you for letting me go over. Second, I cannot stay because I'm going to miss my flight because I spoke too long. I'm literally driving to Des Moines Airport the moment I get off stage. If anybody has questions or ideas or comments or anything, I very How long has it been like that? Okay, because wow. That was supposed to be a really cool moment where I was like, well, that's why I have my contact information up there, is because I can't stay and I want this conversation to continue. So if at any point that can go back up there so people can see my info. Okay, great. I'm sorry I can't hang. I love each and every one of you. You've all been extraordinarily kind. I can't do Q&A because I'm going to get in trouble. They have more stuff they have to do. But I hope to God that you make some level of mental commitment to the calendar commitment that you just made and follow through. This is not for fun. It is for healing and growth and recovery. Please don't exclude yourself from that. Thank you a ton. Thank you a ton. I'm going to go catch a flight. Thank you.